Good morning, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here this morning with this distinguished panel of experts. It's going to be a very thought-provoking discussion on, of course, AI and emerging markets. If you're as old as I am, then you know how hard it is to keep up with the pace of technology, advancing at a mind-boggling and unprecedented speed. And at the heart of this revolution is artificial intelligence, in all the layers of what that means. It isn't just a tool, it is a force for reshaping industries, economies, nations, societies on a global level. And the drive for AI to sustain development is huge. It offers the promise of revolutionizing traditional labor markets, creating new opportunities, and of course, addressing some of the most pressing challenges faced by developing nations. But, of course, as a human rights lawyer, I know that great power comes with great responsibility, so we have to tackle the questions, ethical questions, privacy, security, equity, and we want to make sure that as we embrace artificial intelligence and everything that it has to offer, we don't hurt people along the way. So today, our distinguished panel of experts are at the forefront of this revolution. They're going to bring diverse perspectives from government, industry, academia, civil society, and I'm eager to hear their thoughts on how AI can be harnessed for the greater good. Let's dive into the conversation. I will start with you, Minister Hayrapetyan. As High-Tech Minister of Armenia, this issue falls squarely in your lap. As Armenia works towards best harnessing the potential of AI, how do you envision these advancements helping to position Armenia as a stronger player on a global stage, and particularly in terms of leveling the playing field politically, economically, with our neighboring countries? How can AI contribute to reducing the current imbalances in political, financial, and perhaps even military strength in the region?
Distinguished panelists, it's a privilege to be here today and to be involved in such a vital conversation about artificial intelligence and its impact on our lives. When talking about AI, it's important to say, to remember the famous metaphor, which is that the medal has two sides. So the first side is all about the opportunities that AI is going to offer us, which is going to be related to all the areas within the structure of economy: health, education, agriculture, wherever you wish, mining stuff, energy, everywhere. So it's going to offer us new solutions that is going to make our lives easier. That's obvious, of course. So here, the government of Armenia, we are putting and uniting our efforts to use the maximum potential of AI. But this is the first side of a medal, because you were asking how to somehow balance the powers in the region, which was not only about the political and economic side, it was also about the military stuff in your question. So here we are facing the second side of the medal. So here we have some fears, and it's important to speak about the issue of weaponizing AI, which is quite popular nowadays in many countries, in many platforms, such discussions, that we must be very careful when speaking about weaponizing AI. Of course, it's very attractive from one hand, but from the other side, there are many risks and challenges that AI technologies are going to bring with them for the humanity here. So this is why, starting from the last part of your question, I can say that Armenia is very much involved in many agendas and topics related to the application of the regulation of AI. So we are engaged in many topics regarding this regulation stuff of AI. Because we have the feeling of responsibility, not only towards us. We today there, and especially it's important to speak about the not allowing the monopoly of AI in one group's hand. We can realize which risks it will have. It will bring and create for us, which challenges. So this is why we are involved in such platforms concerning this regulation part. And this means that the legislative work we are going to do, we are going to initiate in cooperation with international partners. So it's an important stuff that the government is focused on nowadays. But from the other hand, as I already mentioned, it's all about the opportunities especially for the economic development for our country, which is going to support the political leadership to implement its projects, programs. So here that we are putting our more and more efforts to use the maximum potential of artificial intelligence. For reaching our goals, there are three main directions that Armenian government is following. The human capital, the human talents, where we are putting a lot of investments, because it's all about the new job specializations, new specifications. Here we are going to put more investments. It's about the infrastructure and data. Speaking about in the part of infrastructure, I can bring some example. For example, inside the Yerevan State University, we are opening AI, the first AI supercomputing center. We are starting with 72 GPUs, and we are dreaming of having more and more in the future. We are in active discussions with our international partners, with many huge corporations. We have already opened another supercomputing center at the engineering city, where the supercomputing center is supporting the machine learning, cloud computing, research in artificial intelligence, in data analysis, in astrophysics, in quantum physics, in bioinformatics. So again, those are examples that Armenian government is putting a lot of resources and investments. And speaking about that, here again we have some progress. We just finalized the draft law on public information, which is going to improve open data management and access. So trying to sum up, again, this all about the possibilities and new opportunities which Armenia is going to use as much as it is possible, for taking into account our opportunities and limited resources, of course. But the second is all about the challenges, because speaking about labor market challenges, yes, it's challenging. The fear of job displacement is quite real. And it's quite real, even if for the IT sector, which is quite advanced in Armenia, it's real for basic coding, for monitoring, for system maintenance. There are many, many risks for this kind of IT specialists. We do realize it. But here we are suggesting to use the helicopter view to maybe to go deeper in the context to get the answers to these questions. And it's to us, it's simple. It's not only just a simple, let's say, elimination of job. It's coming to redefine them. It's definitely is going to reshape all the economy and the structure and the logic of economy. But it's also, we are following them, and it's a reality. And the government of Armenia and the many corporations, in the high-tech industry, they are reskilling, upskilling workforce in Armenia to ensuring ourselves that our people, our society is ready for the new, for the future technologies. And it's very important to ensure ourselves that the society of Armenia is not going just to become a participant in these processes, but the leaders of the new technologies, AI future. So, but the second thing, just finalizing and trying to sum up, is that Armenia, logically, we are very much. It's about careful consideration and deliberation, because when we speak about defense industry, military industry, as I already mentioned, there are a lot of risks that we are taking into consideration. We have to take into consideration. So here we are kind of, let's say, conservative. Of course, discussing the possibilities of bringing new technologies into military industry, but we have some fears. There are some risks and challenges which are obvious, and we are thinking twice or 10 times more before making important decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Hayrapetyan. That was really encouraging, and I'm so excited to see your capable hands take this forward for Armenia and our people. I'll move over to Rohit. You work at Reliance Industries, which is one of India's largest conglomerates, with diversified interests in energy, petrochemicals, telecommunications, and retail. Given Reliance's significant role in driving India's economic growth and technological innovation, how do you see the advancements in AI contributing to India's strategic positioning on the global stage? And in what ways can AI help India bridge any gaps in political and economic influence with other major powers? And what role do you see for AI in enhancing India's overall competitiveness and strength in the international area? And the answer can't just be that India is already the strongest.
Good morning, and Excellency, co-panelists, Chairperson. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you use ChatGPT just to get a sense of the terms? You can own up, you can be honest. Okay, okay. So I was with the key functionary of Indian IT from the government side, and what he said was startling. He said, this is all entertainment. Actually, the real things in AI have yet to start. So the good news is that perhaps all of us, those whose hands went up and those whose hands didn't go up as yet, are actually at the starting point. In a civilizational sense, certainly, if not in a tactical sense. Some of us may be 6 months ahead, a year ahead. I'm not talking of the high-end CS jocks, but generally it's a point of start. Now, on your question, Chairperson, I think the critical issue in my company is the appreciation that what's good for India is good for Reliance. So you simply align yourself to national goals, and the rest starts unraveling. So one of the things we do is an AI native digital infrastructure. We have about 480 million SIM cards in the phones of people, and that includes a lot of data being used at maybe an average of 30 GB per month on a base of 480 million. So you can do the math, those of you inclined to sort of turn to your chat GPT on this one. And the total R&D spend in the last 3 years is about $1.5 billion. And some of it, as you might suspect, is in the arena of high technology. 2,555 patents, and out of them, 350 in the arena I mentioned. The rest are in the other areas, which are also being closely intertwined. Why I say this should be obvious enough slowly, but bioenergy, solar, green, high-value chemicals, they all integrate into the beyond ChatGPT fun and games argument that I'm trying to make. Our patents in 6G, 5G, AI, LLMs, and AI deep learning hopefully will start talking to each other, and for the benefit of not just Reliance, but India and the larger part that I will allude to in a few moments around the India AI mission and the GPAI, which is, of course, as some of you might know, a global partnership on AI in which India was the chair. A turnover of 120 billion is what we represent, and EBITDA of 21 billion, and about net profit of about 9.5. What does it lead to? It leads to a merchandise export of 8% of total India's merchandise exports. And last statistic to pay for my supper, which is 8% of India's merchandise, $22 billion worth of taxes in a year. So that's a bit of this. Now, what it leads to is a business called Jio, Reliance Jio, which has, on a standalone basis, it is the 12th largest company in India already on telecoms and digital alone. And we see ourselves as a digital company, not just a mere telecom company. And it's about 12 billion on its own feet. Now, what's the potential, therefore, to connect, say, 1.5 million schools to high-speed internet, Excellency, 70,000 hospitals, a million and slightly more, 1.2 million doctors? This all leads up to the non-fun and games part, which is fundamentally around the pillars of health, which is diagnosis, prediction, entertainment, personalization at that, retail, the optimization of the supply chains, agriculture on weather predictions, crop, soil health, and so on and so forth, education, which is personalization, etc. So the idea, therefore, in Reliance, as Chairman Mukesh Ambani said about less than 15 days back at the annual general meeting, is that a Geo Cloud, a cloud which has 100 GB of space for each of the 480 million consumers, will be perhaps the foundational principle around which computational ability and service to the cause of each person. And these are not just rich people, these are ordinary people all over the place who will very shortly around Diwali have this sort of computation power and cloud power. So, which brings me to the India story, where the India part is around an India AI mission. And the India AI mission is pretty much inclusive. The name is India, but I think everyone's invited. We have recently hosted the GPAI, as I mentioned. And for those of you who don't know about Indian AI mission, it is under the Ministry of Electronics and IT of India. And we are looking at a computation capability of 10,000 GPUs. And in the case of Reliance, our data centers and processing capacity will be fueled entirely by green energy, because we also have the energy complex just next door in Jamnagar in Gujarat. So back to India, the larger part, which was good for them, for the country is good for us. So the computation capacity, ladies and gentlemen, the innovation center, which includes indigenous LLMs, and we can talk a little bit more if Sheila so chooses, around indigenous LLMs, which are pretty important to stay away from what is already capturing the global attention of friends across the Atlantic. Domain-specific foundation models. We are also looking at data platforms in the India AI mission and future skilling, because I think personally, AI for $1 billion is a very worthwhile cause to have. Because otherwise the gap will only accentuate between the haves and the have-nots and will create tremendous problems. Minister alluded to jobs going awry. There is research in, among others, MIT, which is arguing that the lower down jobs will stay. The upper guys will also come in with their context and their erudition. It's the middle level jobs which might be in serious danger. So how do you therefore pull up people right at the bottom of the pyramid with computational power, with the data and ubiquity at that? Indian data is 10% of the rates at which the West gets their data. So how do you pull up the entire bottom layer up and then equip them with skills which potentially are a big mission by themselves? And last but not the least, the startup financing, safe and trustable AI and app development. So these are the 7 pillars. I encourage you to just type the agenda of the India AI mission to just get a sense of where the country is. And there is through the GPAI, India has tried to involve the 41 odd partner countries that are already there, and the party has just begun. So cross-sectoral applications of real-time usage in, say, for example, a farmer, how can he use the tools which are embedded with the relevant technology which can potentially make them much more productive is the game, and not necessarily just little queries which Google has been giving us all this while. And as a struggling researcher, Sheila, I must mention here that AI can hallucinate significantly. It can generate citations which don't exist. So it's very, very important to realize that hallucinations and fake can also go up significantly with AI. And yesterday in a session, it was brilliantly put to what Minister also just said, that the bad AI is much more accessible now because people don't have to pay for most of it. Earlier, there was a hardware cost. Today, there is none, or virtually none. So we have to guard and protect it together. Collaborate at the enterprise level is what I can do. Minister, of course, at a policy end can tell us more. But suffice to say that democratizing it and standing in close contact with each other is the way forward for AI. And I'll end where I began, which is that all of us can actually be thinking of us at the starting line. We are still at the starting line. And I think it's important to recognize that none of us is an expert. We are all learning, and we can learn from each other. So for a start, maybe go on LinkedIn, talk to each other, read a lot more than you actually do, and you'll find that 20 years down the line, those who have started today, the point of start of today will be very important. So that's where Yerevan Dialogue fits in. That's a beautiful setting, and thank you for hosting us here. And this was the beginning of your AI journey for those of you whose hands were still down. Thank you.
I was trying to remember the most recent AI hallucination that I came across but I couldn't remember it. I just remember laughing out loud and thinking, we really need to be careful when we rely too much on ChatGPT. Thank you, Rohit. That was really, really insightful and helpful. And the numbers that you deal with, the scales that you deal with in India, and it's just like, I can't wrap my head around them. So, Anush, we move on to you. Pixart, our unicorn, right? Armenia's one of many, or one of the only one, the first one, has become a global leader in the creative tech space and leveraging AI to empower millions of users worldwide. Given your experience at the intersection of artificial intelligence and creativity, how do you see artificial intelligence transforming not just industries, but also just how the way individuals express themselves and engage with digital content? What unique challenges and opportunities do you encounter when integrating AI into a platform that serves such a diverse and creative global community?
Thank you for the question. And just to introduce Pixart, Pixart is one of the biggest digital creation platforms with more than 1 billion of downloads, 150 million active users in 150 countries worldwide. So Pixar started just like a drawing tool, and then it grew to like a very diverse and versatile platform when you can create anything. So you can refine your selfies, you can create a social post and share it in Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want. You can also create assets for your digital, like small businesses, like anything, to share on, for example, Shopify, Etsy, and Pixar will help you with this. What I already like to give you an example. Yeah, if you are a small business owner, be it a small coffee shop or you are making pastries, you can take a photo of your product that you want to upsell. Then, in a few clicks, really in a very intuitive way, spending really like not much time. You are taking a photo with no special setup or lighting or anything. And then you are removing your background, you are enhancing the photo you have created, colors, lighting, quality of the photo. Then you can use either one of the million templates that we are offering on the platform, or the best way, using AI to create a background for your photo, for your digital asset. Just to give you an idea of what is happening at the Pixar, we have monthly more than 2 million assets creating only using our text-to-image tool. So when you enter a prompt and you are generating an image based on your wishes, understanding. So all the AI tools that I can mention that exist now in Pixar, text-to-image, text-to-video, image-to-video, background removal, background creation, and many more. They allow you to enhance your creativity. So no more, you do not need a professional to create an asset for you. You just in several clicks can do that. Also, it gives you an opportunity to make a process, like if you have several products, not to spend time on each of them, but make a batch processing and post it wherever you want. So the main thing that AI, like Pixar was already on that way, but what AI tools brought to the platform, this is making AI accessible, making creation process accessible and intuitive for everyone. So you can unleash your creativity, you can use the tools, you can try whatever you want without really spending a lot of hours of learning how these tools work on making a professional edit or something else. So this is mainly how we're using the platform. Coming to your next question, so what challenges we see there? Like I will name a few. First of all, diverse cultural contexts and sensibilities. So AI models are not yet ready to understand what is this fine distinction between the cultures, between the prompt you are entering and results you are waiting. So this is the first one. The second one is, of course, safety and security. So we are not yet reached, you can use AI tools to generate something really, really very beautiful and something really ugly that can be misused in whatever ways possible. And the next thing is bias. So you're training AI models and they can be biased towards the data. So actually all these challenges that I named are highly the outcome of the data, because whatever data we use for training the models, the outcome will depend on the data diversity and the data accessibility that we had for these models. The quality, the diversity, the understanding of what actually the prompt alignment, what actually user wants from us. This all heavily rely on data. Pixar is now partnering with Getty Images to create a clean model when we will not have such an issue, but for you to understand, like, the quality of the models is highly dependent on the amount of data. And if you take like a clean model based on some limited, even if these are millions, data compared to the models trained on the much vaster amounts of data that are available in the internet, so the quality still suffers, but we're working on this direction. And mainly this is it. If you have any other questions.
So basically, you're saying the more people use it, the better the data.
The more people use it, the more feedback we get, the more data we are generating that then come back, can fill back the training data and empower the next, iteration of the model training. We will have better models. Yeah. And maybe one thing that I forgot to mention is intellectual property and copyright. So we need to understand these are like two questions. First of all, we've created this digital art. Users somebody spent time to create a prompt, to adjust it, and to refine the output. Who owns the right for this digital art? Because actually, this is a question that is still open, and we do not have an answer to it. And the second one, as I said, we have clean models, and we have models that is trained on anything accessible. So how we there are a lot of artists' work used in the training of these models. How we give the attribution, how we pay these artists, how we make sure that this is a right way of use of their data. Yeah, this is another question that we need to answer.
Answer it, but I'm a human rights lawyer, not an IP lawyer. But it's true. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anush. That's. Hoda, we move on to you. As a leader in both emerging tech and research innovation, you are deeply involved. Yeah, no? Did it? No, okay. In the intersection of technology and ethics. As AI continues to advance and integrate into various sectors, what do you see as the most pressing ethical concerns that need to be addressed? How can emerging markets, in particular, ensure that AI is developed and deployed in ways that uphold privacy, security, and fairness, while also avoiding the pitfalls of bias and inequality?
I don't know if you can hear me. I hope eventually you will. I think the major aspects here when we are considering ethics with anything, not just AI, with emerging technology cluster in general, we have to admit, I don't know how many technologists are out there in the room, but we have to admit that we're not doing our right due diligence, because the level of governance that exists out there when it comes to producing genuine stack of algorithms that are also ethically mindful is very weak. I think we tend to introduce technology that is functional, but not necessarily human or ethical. And within the lab in Emirates Sec, we are trying to make sure that we bring inceptions and innovation that is quite different. So we try to, yes, build the hardware, build the software, build the algorithmic cluster, but we also care about the policy work, the regulation work that goes around it. Because let's face it, in today's world, if you have an amazing piece of technology that would change the world, if you didn't have access to market with proper regulation and proper policy, then it's a moot point. I mean, your example, Anush, is one of the striking example. Like when it comes to today's definition of intellectual property, we are still stuck in outdated notions, right? We cannot attribute the whole stack of ownership that exists within the digital space, because the lawyers and the legal system is still defining intellectual property in specific sense. To the fact that in the United States, for example, we do have certain laws and legislations that would say that AI doesn't have access to intellectual property rights. And fast forward to today, when we have AlphaFold, for example, by Google, that defines the new structure of protein and structure them. Who would own those kind of a new intellectual property? Because in a human kind of world, when a scientist get to that innovation, they have acquisition of ownership, but we don't. So to me, this is like a striking part of the ethical consideration when you do a mapping, and this is one of the statistics that I constantly share to people, because I think we live in a world that people think, we don't have enough regulations on policies related to AI. In reality, if you looked at the OECD Observatory AI dashboard that they created, you have 1,000 AI regulations and policies, or over 1,000 AI regulations and policies that exist globally. Of course, the policy shows an interest in regulation. I think only around 25% matures to regulation level. And from those 25%, you would have in between 20% to 15% that would focus on ethical considerations. So it's such a slim kind of percentage of the overall efforts, the global efforts that we are having. But the good news that the mass of the emerging markets, the mass of technology developers who come from emerging markets keep on saying what we have heard the minister say: we don't want to be adopters of technology, we want to be creators of this technology, and we want to make sure that we're not lost in the bias, that our nonsense culture, details that exist within every kind of consortium of societies do translates into the algorithm. So this dictates a new paradigm of power when it comes to building the technology. It means that we have to start building technological solutions within this microeconomic climates, because then you would contribute to building new ventures as well. I'm so happy about AI India initiative, because we collaborated with AI India on building different regulatory structures and building algorithmic fairness within the AI. Algorithmic fairness is not new. Like in 2017 and 2016, IBM and Google started initiatives around 360, I think it was called IBM 360, when they were trying to debias the algorithm. You have debuggers today. I don't know how many programmers in the room. When you program a code, you could tend to debug it to remove all kind of, logical and illogical sometimes, bugs from the code. But you don't have something that would remove the biases. So IBM have started that kind of movement by saying we want to remove the bias, but then it's not kind of a real-time analysis to this. So we need to have much more rigorous effort today. Just in 2023, we started, I have a researcher in my lab who's quite happy that he has to write algorithms that are explainable, that are providing consent to users, and at the same time they have a high level of accountability. Imagine you would know, you just refer to the hallucination of the AI, right? So I think over 70% of our AI LLMs are hallucinating. And let's not just also abstract the AI universe within LLMs, but over 70% of our existing LLMs are hallucinating. And actually scientists in the field are referring to these hallucinations as creative pursuits. So they're saying it's amazing that the AI is hallucinating actually, because it's gonna produce a new maybe artwork or a new kind of intellectual property aspects. To us in the field of security, it's like a nightmare, because you are introducing a technology to market that is unreliable. Imagine using that within cancer research, which is one of the research that we have done in our lab as well. We have tried to, I think, tweak the samples on cancer analysis that's use AI, and most of the 70%, our tweaks went undetected, and the algorithm that's being used in few of the technologies that are currently industrially in mass use. Can you imagine how many people are being misdiagnosed on a wider scale of things? So I think we really need to bring in ethics to the map. I think the EU has started with the GDPR law saying that algorithms actually should not be developed and mass surveillance structure. They're saying you have the right not to be analyzed as a user. You have the right to be forgotten from the platform. You have the right as well on multiple aspects. But we don't translate that to technology. So, I mean, lawyers and regulators could write whatever they want on these bills. But if technology is not translating that, it's a moot point. So in the arena of ethics, I think we do have over 15 requirements that are well celebrated today. Amidst them is intellectual properties rights and consent and explainability, accountability and fairness, amidst other things. But the striking difference here that we see is that emerging markets are going to be the markets that I think would put these ethical translations into technology into the map, because they care that their languages, their culture, their ethical nonsense are not forgotten into the wider mix and not assimilated by the mass data sets that are being, synthesized by the AI structures.
Thank you, Hoda. That was really, really insightful. And I just kept, as you were talking, I kept remembering one of the first things I learned in law school, which was that law is always catching up and always out of breath. So especially with tech, it's going to be ever more so. But we got to work together with the developers and the lawyers to make sure that we're in good shape. Mallory, on to you. How do you suggest that we separate the durable, transformative aspects of AI from the hype? What criteria or indicators should we use to discern which AI advancements are truly impactful and which ones are more just fleeting trends?
Yeah, no, thanks very much for inviting me to this panel. It's always a real pleasure to be part of these events. And thanks to the hosts in Armenia as well. So I am also a technologist and don't want to be the last person to go in this really, I think, uplifting and hopeful panel to shatter everyone's hopes about the promises of AI. But I do, and I also will admit that I love robots. I love interacting with new technology. So I'm very pro AI. But this, I think, is why it's so important to address the hype. Actually, I think that without hyping the capabilities of the current tools or the future tools, we have a lot to be impressed by, and there's a lot of real and tangible potential. So let me get into some of that. So I guess we haven't really been living very long with the imagination of generative AI. It's been less than 2 years that we had ChatGPT, for example, on the market. And also generative images are also really rather new. I remember actually pretty vividly, I wrote a tweet when I first started using ChatGPT. I'm like, this is just 3 Wikipedias in a trench coat. Like, how could this be more impressive than like the largest collaborative knowledge project in the history of the world? That was sort of my take. I stand by that tweet, actually. But I think in other ways, though, AI is very old. I think the first academic project focused on artificial intelligence is from the 1950s. And I recently, probably before I played with ChatGPT, read this fascinating book on the history of the filing cabinet that gave me all kinds of understanding of how just data structures in general have planted this creative seed in humanity around how, if we learn and structure data, how we can extrapolate it and use it. And I mean, if we're talking about how emerging markets or governments can leverage AI, we are kind of talking about advanced filing cabinets, really, right? We're talking about, bureaucracy enhanced. This is not to say that this isn't great. Like I said, I think there's a lot to like here. I wanted to talk about a few of the guardrails or a few of the constraints maybe that will come into play as we think about what the future is, right? So if, by some measures, I think what we see now in terms of the impressive capabilities of generative AI, I think we may not see a lot of massive, impressive gains for a while. I know that's counter maybe to some people who've spoken before, but I think the reasons are very clear. One, I would just say that computing power, it does require a lot of computation that has a real impact on the environment. So whatever major advances are made, we do need to think about how that has an impact on energy consumption, on data centers globally, and that sort of thing. So that may be one constraint that we probably should impose. Another is data sources. So as has been kind of alluded to before, the way that these large models are able to work so well is when there's a lot of data. So the ones that are really impressive, like generative AI, they're really only very impressive in English, right? If people have noticed that, it's because there's a lot of English language content out in the world. It's less impressive in other languages where there's not the same volume of content in those languages. There are other examples of this. Content moderation on social media, it's really spotty. And some of the ways in which it's really challenged is in types of content where it's not very abundant. So one example, which actually an executive from Facebook at the time admitted, was there was an active shooter video that came out of New Zealand. And so they started talking about how can we build AI detection to stop those kinds of videos from going viral. And the Facebook executive admitted that, we don't really have a whole lot of videos of active shooting incidents to train a model on. And so that kind of imposes this natural limitation on how good a detection model could ever be. There's a lot of examples like that. They're just, and also we just don't really have big piles of data lying around anymore that haven't already been scooped up by these tools. And to the point around copyright, now that these big language models have been released, and also video and photos, content owners and publishers are now a lot smarter about their ownership of that data. And so new models that will be trained on existing data will have less data than before, if that makes sense. So the New York Times, Wikipedia, these large sources of data are now not going to allow that to just be scooped up for free. But let me talk more about how it is going to get incrementally better. It will improve, no doubt. I have really high hopes for what Hoda was speaking about in terms of the eradication of bias and so on. Again, there are going to be natural limits. There's always going to be hallucination. There's always going to be mistakes. And therefore, I think the antidote to those risks is just to be careful about how it's applied and to then regulate or worry about the guardrails around the application of the tool and not imagine that it could always be perfect. Another way that it's getting incrementally better is that query length can become massive. You can feed these generative tools an entire book or 2 or 3 and then ask it to generate something from that. That's a massive query. That's millions of characters. So it will get better. New applications are going to get better. But again, this is aligned with where are the sources of data coming from, and then what can you build from it. I also just want to say that I think, again, there's the reason I don't want to be in the position of sort of the anti-hyper here is that I do think that the things that have hit the headlines that have made everyone a little worried actually about AI it's generally because they've been democratized, right? So some of the AI doomerism, right, the opposite of hyping, is because these tools are in all of our hands, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think we should be inherently scared of them just because a lot of people are using them. I think that's actually pretty exciting, and so hopefully the regulation around that, as others have mentioned, keeps that in mind and keeps it democratic. I want to just run through a couple things that I can give you a message about, not just a learning tutorial about, machine learning. But what I worry about the hype is that it obscures some real political economic questions. For example, having always worked in software, and one of the ways I think about AI is just it is data-driven software. It is just software, but today's software. One of the things that has been going on for a long time since the digitalization in governments and other sectors is that digitalization, software, and now AI are seen as austerity measures, that now we can save money because the tool will do it for us. And I just don't think that that's the right way to think about these tools. In fact, what it maybe allows is actually that you invest more, but you're not investing more in the tool, you're investing more in the people that are running governments, the people that are running businesses, and you see the AI tools as supplementary to that. So you're continuing to strengthen your social sector, you're continuing to strengthen these important functions and roles, as well as getting the boon from the AI tech capabilities and enhancing what your workers are doing and what your civil servants are doing and so on. And so rather than thinking of AI as a replacement, AI is a supplement to human intelligence. And the real goal and the real project is to enhance and improve human intelligence. I have a lot more notes here, but I get the sense that other people want to come in with other questions.
Yeah, I also, in the conversations about whether AI is beneficial or going to take jobs and what's the hype, and I just say I think it is a supplement to human intelligence, and it does help us level up. And I think all forms of technology, or most at least, have helped us increase our capacity for, or like our potential, our human potential. Okay, hold on. I'm going to be the moderator that's going to cut us off at 11. That means 5 minutes. I think I'm going to go with one question to one. Oh no. You know, we can also all ask questions afterwards, but I will allow a question.
Sujan Chinoy, the Director General of the Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, New Delhi. Question is to Mallory. You spoke about the lack of data for example, machine learning for shooters. Now, is it possible that in the age of artificial intelligence, you can also have artificial simulated data? Why do you actually need to wait for clips, horrendous clips like that to come along before you wait to teach machine learning? Why can't you create simulated data that works quite as effectively? Second part of the question is about whether AI will be agnostic in terms of the sensitivities of different civilizations, their histories, their religion, their mores, their traditions. If not, and it becomes a generalized tool available to everyone, and innocently, using such tools, will it lead to a certain kind of cognitive warfare that puts some people at advantage and vast numbers, mostly in developing countries, at a great disadvantage? Thank you.
Yeah, happy to answer. And also, I think, Hoda, you might have a response as well. So to your question about simulated data, this is a very good idea, and I think one that others have had. The problem with using simulated data to train the models that then are either generative or analytical is that it erodes the accuracy over time, and you get diminishing returns really quickly. So there have been some people who said this is another constraint, even of the existing large language models that power something like ChatGPT. It may actually start getting worse unless you optimize in other ways, because the data that's out there now, because there's so much data being generated by AI, it's starting to feed back into itself, and it will start declining. So you need ways to signal to the model, don't scoop this up, it's already synthetic, versus keep scooping this up, it's new and novel, and it's going to improve the model. So I think we have to be really careful with these ideas, and this is, again, why the constraint exists. And it feeds exactly into your second question, which is then clearly there are going to be differences and disparities because of the availability of data in different parts of the world, in different languages, in different cultures. It's going to create differences in capabilities of AI. I'll just share one quick example. I was listening to someone describe how they were running into issues, not just with other languages, but other images or words for things. So they were saying, in one culture, the shape of a cup is different than it is in another. And so when you do a sort of image capture and the computer vision is trying to detect, is this a cup? It first has to see that it's a cup, but it's differently shaped in another culture. And it also then translates that word as cup, which is an English word. And it's probably not called cup in that language either. So we keep translating everything through English and then back out again, which is really inefficient and also continues to feed and prioritize this sort of English-centric view and vision of the world. And I think without, we were talking about emerging markets, right? And I think I agree with the panelists who've said there is a lot of promise in emerging markets because there's so much that can be done here that will actually improve AI for everyone if it's done in a different way.
Just to add to what you have said, Mallory, I think in the lab, we have different learning models for different purposes. So it depends actually on the purpose. And we don't want to assimilate a generic purpose. I think the standard machine learning algorithm is using a learning set, a fixed learning set, to generate some kind of learnings based on that. But we do have as well advanced deep learning adaptive model that you use mostly in robotic structures. For example, imagine a robot that goes into a forest not knowing the dimensions of the robot of the forest, and then they recalculate their dimensions based on the live feed of the data. Within these scenarios, like if you pre-generated data and did the assimilation, you might fail because the adaptability of the model will be really degraded. So it depends on the context, I would say, on when you simulate the data. It's not the best scenario because you tend to poison the learning model of the algorithm. And you want always your algorithm to be as realistic as possible. So again, depends on the algorithm that's being developed. Yeah.
We have ended right on time. Any further questions can be addressed to our co-panelists during the break that's coming up. Thank you all so much. You made my job so easy. I learned so much. And I think this was a wonderful panel for the first thing in the morning. Thank you all.